Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we are live here for you. Once again, it's Wednesday, August the 5th. We're live on KTLK Digital Broadcasting. This show where we talk about all things weird, strange, phenomenal, spiritual, metaphysical, you name it. We'll even talk about your aunt's problems. We'll talk about whatever. Like last night we were talking about money and, investing. It was crazy, right? We're going to talk about alchemy tonight with our guest, Sarah Durn. It's her first time being on the podcast, and I believe I did hear her on Cosmic Keys, which is cool. Anytime we get a chance to talk about alchemy, I'm pretty stoked about that. So I know some of you guys are still being patient with us, dealing with the transition from the new system to the old one and yada, yada, yada. Until that all gets switched over, I'm just going to keep reminding you guys. That way you don't get confused. But when in doubt, go to TalkStream Live or Paranormal Radio for right now. I'm still working with TuneIn and everybody else. Or the website has the web app players that you can use on your mobile device too. All right? So I want to thank the patrons for making this show possible. You guys really are saving my life right now. You have no idea. And if you want to sign up and help the show out and become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/LTV radio. And the banners are on the website there as well. I'm going to kind of change things. I usually start the show off thanking the sponsors and stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of do that as we go along, because I feel like I'm just burning time right in the beginning and when I do that kind of stuff. And I don't know. Just kind of want to switch it up. If you guys want to join our chat room, though, you can go to thefringe.fm/chat room. If you want to follow the best in ufology, you do need to follow UFO Seekers at UFO Seekers on Twitter and ufoseekers.com, youtube.com/UFO Seekers. And because I will give them a mention for sure. And I do want to remind you guys, right now, everything and Mind and Magic Freighter Xavier store. And I do mean everything. You can go check out anything from that store. put in the code word Fringe and get 15% off. I don't know if he's doing that for anybody. I really don't think he is. Matter of fact, he told me, he was like, well, your audience is pretty much the only one that does those kind of recommendations. So apparently he's getting some from y'all, and he really appreciates it. So thank you. The call-in number for tonight is 1-800-588-0335. You can call in when we open the phone lines up. And after the broadcast, the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable will be on. Tomorrow night on the program, we're going to have Tom Zentzer on from soulcenteredhealing.net. And then Friday night, Amalia Eon Karras will join us again to talk about activating your soul mission and going through all this fear of change kind of stuff. But tonight, our guest is Sarah Durn, and the website is sarahDurn.com. That's D-U-R-N-S. Actually, let me start at the beginning. S-A-R-A-H-D-U-R-N, sarahDurn.com. And she wrote a book called Practical Lessons and Exercises to Enhance Your Life, The Beginner's Guide to Alchemy. And Sarah is a freelance writer based in New Orleans, and she's written for Bust, Gizmodo, IO9, the AV Club, the MarySue Stage, and Candor, and Film Daily, among others, on topics ranging from Godzilla to feminism to all things medieval and alchemical. And her first book, The Beginner's Guide to Alchemy, will be published by, looks like, Callisto and Rockridge Press, which is already out. I guess that thing is already out, right? So she's also a professional actor and has acted in film and theater in New York, regionally and internationally. You're a star and an alchemist. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
What, that's a kind of a first to me. Somebody from Louisiana who's an actor and does alchemy too. So like, are you, when you talk about alchemy, are we talking about like the puffer stuff, the spiritual stuff, the Carl Jungian alchemy? How do you go about this?
Yeah, so the book is The Beginner's Guide. So it goes into all of those different facets of alchemy. We touch on Jung, we touch on the puffers, I forget the third thing you said, but yeah, it goes into all the different kind of facets of alchemy. So it was a really fun project to work on.
Well, when did you first start getting involved with it? What got you involved with alchemy to begin with?
It was, so I studied the Middle Ages in college. I was like realizing I was going to graduate soon. It was like, oh my gosh. So I got really nerdy and was kind of like, what have I always wanted to study? And I stumbled into this medieval romance class, which I thought would be about the history of love in the Middle Ages. And I had no idea that romance was actually a genre of literature in the Middle Ages. It was like courtly literature, like the Arthur legends. And I thought it was so cool. And so I kept taking classes, and then I became my major. And kind of from there, I took a course that just started to touch on alchemy. It was called Science and Religion. And it was a great course taught by this professor called Matthew Stanley. He was amazing. And we talked a lot about how the intersection of science and religion and how the two are far more intertwined than we often think they are today. And in that course, there's like one reading that was optional on alchemy. And I had sort of heard about alchemy because I got really into this fantasy trilogy called The Discovery of Witches, written by Deborah Harkness. And so I kind of, those two things were coinciding in that I was in this class, I was reading this book, alchemy kept popping up. And so I started diving more into it. I started reading more about it. And then eventually, a couple years, I guess, I was like a year and a half after I graduated. I had been freelance writing for a bit, and I pitched this article to Gizmodo about A Discovery of Witches. So that fantasy series I had been reading, untangling its alchemy, the alchemy in the story that Deborah Harkness interweaves into the whole narrative. And Deborah Harkness is actually an academic and a medievalist who studies the history of science, which that's kind of the fancy academic way of saying she studies alchemy to some degree. So I wrote this article about kind of untangling alchemy from the book series and how much, because a lot of it is actually based on real alchemy. Like, she wasn't making stuff up for the book. And then it was based after that article came out that a publisher, it was a while after the article came out, like maybe 9 months later, reached out to me, and it was Callisto. And I got this email in my inbox being like, are you interested in writing a book on alchemy? And I was like, what is this? What is this about? You know, you don't get your first book deal usually from an email. But I was very, very lucky. So yeah, I signed on and wrote this book. It was a really quick process. I wrote the first draft of the manuscript in like 6 weeks. Had like tons of books open, all on alchemy, academic text. I ordered like 20 different books from Amazon, all on alchemy, and was just researching as I wrote. And it was a very intensive alchemical process to write the book. And then it came out in May, late May.
So is it easy to say, like, you didn't know as much about the subject until you actually was asked to write a book about it? That's pretty
definitely safe to say. Yeah.
How come nobody ever hits me up and asks me to, what do I got to do that? I want somebody to hit me up and ask me to, like, write a book for us, would you? Was it
right?
Was it your other books or your acting career? What do you think got I mean, why do you think they reached out to you for this? Seriously.
It was definitely that article I wrote for Gizmodo, because it did really well on the site, and they ended up publishing it out. They have a UK conglomerate, and they published it elsewhere in the English language speaking world. So I think they just found me through the article.
No, that's fascinating to me. So Gizmodo, what have you acted in? I'm just curious. Have you been in any?
Yeah,
I'm really curious. Sorry.
No, it's great. I feel like a lot of times people don't ask me about acting. It's like these two separate worlds. And for me, I see a lot of connections between the arts and acting and alchemy and writing in general. Well, a lot has been postponed because of everything with coronavirus. But most recently in the film world, I just acted in this indie horror feature. The star was on The Vampire Diaries. Her name was Gracie Gillum. She was really sweet. It was directed by Jessica Janos, and it's called Black Market Baby.
Black Market Baby. Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, that don't sound.
I think it's going to be on Lifetime.
Yeah, that don't sound very good. That sounds kind of wild, actually.
No, it's bad.
But you were in Vacancy. That's cool. I've seen that. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
I've seen that.
Yeah.
It's an indie film, right? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. And then I do a lot of theater too. I do a lot of regional theater, both in New Orleans and here in Cleveland. But the theater world is kind of on pause right now.
So I think a lot of people.
Hopefully, I'll be in a play again.
Well, yeah, I hope all of this stuff will end up going away too. It's just a lot of, I'm hoping it all goes away because it's really weird and strange. Yeah. But speaking of alchemy, I want to talk about that too, because I think what's going on now is causing people to alchemize, if you will, or transform in certain ways, because we're all stuck with ourselves, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I kind of see everything. I mean, so in alchemy, there's these 7 stages of transformation, and the 7 stages are comprised of 3 different phases of transformation. So the 7 stages fit into each phase. And it's really, having written the book and talked about it a lot, and seeing, so the first stage of alchemy is calcination, which is, Jung describes it as the dark night of the soul. It's where you have to face yourself. And it's a lot of times not welcome, in that it's, like a car accident where you might lose a loved one or a loved one, or a pandemic where we're all stuck at home. Is this kind of, it's the uninvited craziness that happens in life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can invite it on your own too, if you're like, doing shadow work and you're journaling about your, the gunk that you have to clear out to try and become a better human being. So I really see, like, I think with quarantine, it's, a lot of us had to face a lot of the gunk, a lot of the biases, stereotypes, bad habits, because you're just kind of left on your own, and you're not, you can't distract yourself with friends or going out to a bar or going to a movie. You're just sort of stuck. And I think with everything that has been happening in the last few months with the Black Lives Matter movement, and that's the big thing that comes to mind. I just feel like it's been this watershed moment for our nation and for Americans to face our own national stereotypes and biases like racism, and kind of have to work through that in a new way. I feel like it's, and I think you're seeing that in different ways too, with like the lack of health care and how important it is that we support our essential workers, and how do we do that well, and how do we keep them safe. It's not a revelation to say that coronavirus has definitely revealed a lot of the things that our nation needs to make better.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stipulation on that, and there's the problem. I think one of the big problems is if we get involved with alchemy, I think it becomes incredibly hard to transform. And I don't know, maybe you have a different opinion, but I think it becomes incredibly hard to transform as an individual when you're constantly trying to battle the outside world, right? Because in Hermetics, the exterior world represents your interior world. Am I saying that, like, if you changed who you are inside, maybe you would wake up next day in a different world? I don't know. That's possible.
Yeah.
But according to Hermetics, it's possible.
Yeah. And the alchemist would say that you always would have to start with yourself. Like the calcination process of, kind of facing your shadow is what Jung calls it. The kind of dark aspect of yourself that you hide away. Until you deal with that, you can't really deal with much else.
You did a play called The Stupid Fucking Bird? That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I did. I was in, it was the Cleveland premiere of the play. Was called Stupid Fucking Bird. Am I allowed to swear?
No, but it's okay. I did it, so you can.
Oh.
It's all right.
Okay. That's the title.
It's the title. Right? Whatever.
Yeah, we're just being accurate. It's not actually. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's based off of an old Russian play by Chekhov called The Seagull, and this really, really smart playwright, whose name is, of course, escaping me. It'll come to me. He wrote this very quirky, contemporary, tongue-in-cheek adaptation of it that still is very true to the original story. And I love The Seagull, the original play it's based on. So yeah, that was very fun.
Right on. So as you were writing this book about alchemy, did you have any experiences or any types of aha moments? Because I'm going through the book a little bit, and you really get into like tinctures and how people applied the physical alchemy, things like that. It's not just like a general. I mean, I would say it's not just a general book about it. Like using metal alchemy to transform inadequacy into power. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What did you learn? What do you think the biggest thing that you learned about alchemy through this whole experience was? If you could take away one thing.
Oh, I mean, to answer your first question of like my biggest aha moment was definitely in digging into the history of alchemy and literature and seeing how connected alchemy is with Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero's journey, and seeing that these 7 stages of transformation, it's the same 7 stages that we see in texts like Beowulf or Shakespeare, that we see characters go through these 7 stages. And in a way, it's way more specific than Plato's idea of like the rising action, climax, falling action, of those kind of 3 parts of a story, like beginning, middle, and end. And so that was really cool to dig into, and to know that Joseph Campbell was directly influenced by Jung. And because Jung was so influenced by alchemy, Joseph Campbell got into alchemy. I found like these old lectures he did where he talks about the connections of alchemy and literature. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so, especially as somebody who loves stories and is an actor and a writer, I was really interested in how these 7 stages, you can kind of like, once you know them, you see them play out all around you. Like when you're cooking dinner and seeing the spinach transform into a different form.
Wow. Everything is alchemizing, huh? That's interesting.
Right. When you look at everything and you just see everything as transformation, and it is transformation. Like nothing, the only constant is change, right? So everything is slowly transforming into something else. And if you're aware of that and kind of seeing that, the world is so much more interesting and exciting. And I think the biggest takeaway, because those questions, I guess, to me seem a little different, has to do with that perspective that alchemists had that is so curious about everything. They were constantly investigating their beliefs and trying to see how the physical world, like the planets, the moon, and the smallest aspects of their world, these minerals, this dust, how it transforms and how that transformation becomes a blueprint to transform yourself. They didn't just see the world around them as this stagnant, solid, predictable thing. They saw it as a roadmap to becoming better. And it's so, I think it's so applicable. It's very, tied to many mystical traditions of,
sure. Yeah. Well, let's do this.
But I think their way is very...
We got to take our first break here. Sure. Unfortunately, we do. We got to take our first break. But I think we should definitely talk about the stages of alchemy, because it's like we've talked about alchemy on this show so much, but I don't think we've ever talked about the 7 stages of alchemy, which is common. So it's not like we're giving your book away, but I don't know, out of 500 and something shows that we've done, I don't know why I haven't talked about that. Pretty interesting. You think I would have by now, but anyways, yeah. So, we're going to take our first break, and then we'll be right back. We're with Sarah Durn. You can go to the website at sarahdurn.com. Check out the resume. It's pretty impressive. All types of theater she's been in, including The Stupid Effing Bird. We'll be right back.
Please listen. Now is not the time to fear. When your immune system is strong, shields up. You have very little worries. If your immune system is compromised, you're susceptible to all viruses. I say shields up and no fear. Try Heart Love from GetTheTea.com. Heart Love has a special ingredient called allicin. It comes from the healing part of the garlic plant. No garlic breath, no garlic leaking out your pores, just pure immune-building ingredients that gets your shields up. Heart Love is a unique blend of herbs that loves to build you up. Google garlic and know the benefits. One Heart Love pill is equal to 20 cloves of garlic. 20 cloves! Shields up. You've heard of our Life Change Cleansing Tea at GetTheTea.com. Now try Heart Love. And by the way, take your blood pressure and watch weekly what happens. So here's how to purchase. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and build your shields. That's GetTheTea.com. Mention Ray in the coupon code and hit apply and receive free shipping.
Born out of the alchemical tradition of Paracelsus is a medical tradition called Spagyria. Though not many people practice this work today, Phoenix Aurelius has been researching and teaching this work for the last 15 years, and he needs your support.
Hi, I'm Phoenix Aurelius, and I'm the founder of the Phoenix Aurelius Research Society, where I perform modern scientific research on the methods and techniques of Paracelsian alchemy and Spagyria for health, wellness, agriculture, ecology, and more. All my work is 100% funded by the public, so if you like what I'm doing and you want to support my research, please consider making a purchase of spagyric medicines from my apothecary, fund your own spagyric IDF wellness research, or participate in my group study or one-on-one immersion courses so that you can learn how to perform this work for yourself. I want to thank you in advance for your support.
Visit thefringe.fm/alchemy research and enter coupon code FRINGE and receive 15% off anything and everything on the website. That's thefringe.fm/alchemy research. And thank you for doing your part and keeping alchemy alive in the modern day.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hey, this is country music singer and void walker Jason Benoit, and when I need my fix on the world of magic and the capabilities of the human consciousness, I listen to Joe Roop right here on Lighting the Void Radio.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's Savings and Laundry. Member FDIC AAA. Remember, if Ed's ever loses any of your money, they'll send a tow truck out to look for it.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. We're live on the Fringe FM. Please join our chat room by going to thefringe.fm/chat room, and you'll get in on the Discord in there. Everybody's really nice. They'll say hi, be nice, be respectful, and treat other people the way you want to be treated, and you won't get kicked. I think I got like 15 people in there that have permission to just kick people, and some of them have a really fun time with it, so just don't give them any excuses to do it. So they'll kick you like 3 times and then you get banned. It's kind of like the old nerdy chat rooms of IRC back in the day, but it's way better because you can do a lot more stuff in Discord. Anyways, it's fun in there. So you guys go play, right? We'll do a GIF war here in a little bit. So our guest tonight is Sarah Durn. We're talking about her book that's out actually, and I don't know why. But I got too focused on the resume. But the book is The Beginner's Guide to Alchemy, which is practical lessons and exercises to enhance your life. I got the Kindle version of it, and if you want to know or understand alchemy from its basic and a little bit more, like it's not just super basic. There's a lot of cool information in here. Go grab it. You can get it for like $13 paperback, $10 in Kindle, or if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get that as well. So We already talked about, Sarah, like the first stage of alchemy, which was the calcination stage, right? Which they used like this fancy, like Latin. They always use Latin. The Renaissance magicians did, right? This is Latin, isn't it? The calcination stage of Negredo. That's got to be Latin, I would think.
Yeah, Negredo is Latin for black. So it's the black phase. I don't know. Calcination does have a Latin name too, but I don't know it offhand. I'd have to look it up.
There's blackening. So you say that the alchemists divide the 7 stages into 3 big phases, which is the blackening, which is pronounced Negredo, and the whitening, which is pronounced Albedo, and the reddening, which is pronounced Rubedo. But they break those 3 down into 7 steps. That's interesting.
Correct. Yeah. It's interesting, too. You would think that white and black would maybe be at 2 opposite ends. So you might think it would go white, red, black. But in the Middle Ages, red was actually seen as the opposite of white. And then white and black became the opposite of one another more later on.
Red was the opposite of white in the Middle Ages. Okay. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it goes white, black, or black, white, red.
So the beginning stages is more like when you're going through hell, I would say. Calcination, you say in your book, entails burning a substance over flame or with liquid fire, such as an acid or corrosive chemical, until the substance is reduced to ashes. The word itself means reduced to bone by burning. Yikes.
Yeah.
But in spirituality,
right?
I think I understand that spiritually, though. I've had that happen. That's kind of like when you hit rock bottom, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's exactly that. And I think you can find it in smaller ways, too. I don't think you have to be at, like, you know, your most depressed state ever to begin the process of transformation through the 7 stages. I think you could, you know, it could be as simple as starting to journal on your shadow self, which was Jung's idea of like the dark side of the soul that we all have and sort of have to interrogate. But yeah, calcination is not pleasant. I think it's kind of nice in a way, because I feel like in the self-help world, there's this idea that, you know, doing all this work on yourself is really fun and like enlightening and affirmation. The alchemists did not see it as like this fun frolic through a field. It was hard, and it was like, for them, it was the literal experiment is holding a substance over fire. So it was really, I mean, imagine just like being in the Middle Ages and trying to have an even gradual flame as you burn the substance, and you're in the fire and you're hot, and they wore a lot more clothes than we do. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, which I think is sort of a relief, because I think that so oftentimes we're told it should be fun.
Change is not always fun. It depends on the type of person you are. Like if you're a triple fire sign or something, then you love change. Yeah, let's do it, whatever. You know, you're impulsive, it doesn't matter. But if you're more of like a practical person and you like creature comforts and comforting things, change is a bitch. It really is. It can even cause you stress and stuff until you make it through it.
Oh,
definitely. I think it's rewarding on the other end, though.
Yeah, for sure.
So we go to the next stage, which is the dissolution stage of Negredo, right? And in your book, you say in physical alchemy, dissolution, sometimes just called solution, takes the ash produced in calcination and dissolves them in a liquid solvent. And this process is where we get the word elixir from, which comes from the Arabic al-elixir, from the ashes. And in mental and spiritual alchemy, dissolution refers to breaking down all the salts or assumptions. That's interesting. All the salts or assumptions or pre-programs that we have that snuck into our unconscious. Pretty cool. Right? So this is when you're everything sucks so bad in your life, you don't know what way is up or down, or you're going through some type of transformation where you begin to question all of your previous programming.
Right. And I think kind of the nice thing about dissolution is that it's usually when, so it's a liquid solvent. So there's some sort of water or liquid that is introduced to the substance. So in esoteric alchemy, which is mental and spiritual alchemy, sort of the more, personal transformation side of it. Losing my thought, but that it's, the idea is that, so you've just been burned by the fire, and now in the second stage, disillusion, you're sort of given a moment to kind of, be gentle with yourself. The water is introduced, and you get a moment to calm and the things settle. And the ashes from calcination kind of have a moment to like be soft, and you can be, that's like the self-care part a little bit. Like, I think, and you see that a lot through the 7 stages, is like this difficult stage of fire, heat, paired with a stage that involves water, or kind of a cleansing, and something that's softer and easier. And you see it go back and forth like that, so that, say, when you've gone through the difficult stage of calcination, you've done the work, you've done the journaling into your shadow self, you've, hit rock bottom, and you're starting to come out of it, there's an element of like clarifying and sitting in the water. There's literally like images of disillusion in medieval texts where like you see a king sitting in water, and that was because the king had just gone through calcination. So there's this moment of relaxing in the bath.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I think if anybody's been listening to the show for quite some time, we've all been going through this together. Well, like when, for instance, we can look at transformation as like when COVID hit, right? COVID hit, and it put us all through some kind of hell, which is calcination, right? And then there's dissolution, which is, well, now we're all like challenging our beliefs and our assumptions about everything and what's going on. Hell, the damn doctors don't even know what's going on with this stuff. There's so many false positives. Nobody really knows.
Yeah.
But we are learning to do what? Through separation, we're learning to nurture ourselves. We're looking at everything different, and we're learning like, hey, what really makes me happy? Now that I'm stuck with myself, what really makes me happy? What were my previous programs that were keeping me from that? What do I need to do to feel better? Right? I think a lot of people are going through that right now.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, see, pretty much everybody is. What? What is your sun sign, if you don't mind me asking, if that's okay?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm on the cusp of Pisces and Aquarius.
Okay. Yeah, so you're probably definitely going through it for sure.
Yeah.
But you're probably feeling a lot better right now with the Aquarius new moon. Probably went through the worst of it already. But so the separation stage is next, stage 3, which in your book you talk about stage 3, the separation stage of albedo. And physical alchemy, separation discards the waste from dissolution and calcination to retrieve the matter's essential parts. To accomplish separation, the liquid of dissolution is usually passed through a filter or porous paper. And in mental, I think when you say mental, you mean like young, right? And spiritual alchemy, separation is about looking objectively at the parts of your personality and spiritual self and discarding what no longer serves you. So you do hear a lot of people say, discard what no longer serves you. So that's part of this part, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's all these 7 stages. That's the gist of it. It's discarding what no longer serves you. And each stage is a different tool or a different way of doing that, because the goal is to become your most essential, authentic, pure self. You're like, in the physical alchemy, it's in the exoteric alchemy, it's moving from lead to gold. So in the esoteric alchemy, so like the personal transformation side of things, you're moving from your leaden self to your golden self. So it's all about kind of clarifying and purifying yourself and getting rid of what you don't need.
Right. So the next stage would be conjunction, and that takes the purified matter from separation and creates an altogether just a new substance, and they call this new substance the child of conjunction. But, and this is what Phoenix was talking about too, right? He says you can use alchemy, physical alchemy, to challenge the operations to see if you're doing things right. So failing to create a new substance means that the matter extracted from separation is contaminated and that the alchemist experiment has failed, which probably means in spiritual self that there was some stuff that you didn't work out or you held on to.
Yeah.
That you didn't get rid of.
Yeah. Yeah, because we like to hold on to our stories about who we are and what we're about. And I think to some degree it's healthy. One of the things I found kind of difficult is I feel like the 7 stages of alchemy in some ways is like at the end you're Buddha, like you are this enlightened being, you're Jesus, you're, you know, choose your enlightened being. But I think like on a practical level, because not all of us are going to become Buddha in this lifetime, you can still apply. Yes, it means like if you fail to create a new substance, the experiment has failed. But the brilliance of alchemy and what alchemists were all about was the experimenting, the work of this transformation, of personal transformation, of physical transformation. That is enlightenment to some degree. Just by doing the work, that's it. And there's even this alchemist, I think it was John Dee, who said that he kind of realized that with the materials and the equipment he had, it was never going to be possible for him to turn lead into gold, which, you know, is the epitome of alchemical experiments. That was like, if you could do that, you could do anything. But he still continued to do alchemy and continued to do experiments because that was, in a way, its own prayer and its own end. Even if you don't become enlightened by the end of the 7 stages, the work is enough, if that makes sense. So, yes, you failed, but you failed only in the sense that you have the gift of going back and trying again, which is kind of what it's all about.
Yeah, failure is a part of success. But I think a lot I would say from a man's point of view, though, if there's any men that are worried about like changing or anything like that, you just gotta just focus. I don't think failure is an option. I mean, you're gonna fail along the way, but all you really are doing is just like changing your strategy, you know, because I feel like if you're really focused on something, then you're going to succeed no matter what, even if you might have a failure, what you consider as a failure. But that's succeeding at manifestation is a little bit different than, I would say, transformation, though. So failing to transform is a whole different thing, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't really love the word failure because, like, if you really interrogate anything, your failures are what end up making you who you are much more than your successes do. I think kind of regardless if you're a man or a woman, I think failure kind of sucks as a word. So it's always about change and just moving onward.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly don't even know why I brought up about being a man. I think that's what I've been going through, honestly. This transformation that I've been going through is more like, especially for the past year and a half, because, you know, I'm a father and all this other stuff that, like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing to have a happy life, to provide and protect for the people I love in my life by doing a radio network and a podcast? I mean, how manly is that? And then, you know, I have like most of the people that support the show or that have come along and support the show haven't. I mean, there's guys that support the show, but a majority of them have been women, you know. And there's just all this stuff that's happened in my life that's making me question what what the idea of, and I think a lot of us are going through, I think the country needs to go through this too. What is our idea of masculine energy? Divine masculine needs to change, right? For sure. I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot
I
of
mean,
us are
the
feeling
alchemist. Yeah, for sure. In alchemy, alchemists were obsessed with opposites. So the male and female dichotomy was one of the ones they were obsessed with. In conjunction, so tying it back to the fourth stage of alchemy, was also a moment of the sacred marriage. So the sacred marriage is where the white queen and the red king marry and have a child, or have the child is conceived in conjunction.
Gotcha.
So, and the child of conjunction is androgynous, so it's a hermaphrodite. So it's the union of both masculine energy and feminine energy, however you want to define those two things. And it's interesting, too, in different alchemical texts, they define like the red king's traits differently than the white queen's traits, and sometimes their attributes switch. So they saw it very fluid. And there's actually a really interesting medieval manuscript, to step away from alchemy for just a second, called Silence. It was discovered just like very recently, like I think less than 20 years ago. It was found in some attic. The only manuscript we have of this text. And in it, this woman becomes a man. And it's a medieval romance, I think 1300s. And so gender was more fluid in a way in the Middle Ages. And actually, women's rights in the Middle Ages were much better than after the Renaissance. So the idea of like, just, I guess to say all that to say that the conception of masculine or feminine and what it means to be masculine or feminine, to be manly or feminine, has changed throughout history so much. And I think, it's one of the stories we tell.
Yeah,
I identify as a woman. Yeah.
Right? Like, that's something that I've realized, too. There are the polarity exists, for sure. There's definitely polarity in the energy, right? But every person has a certain amount of masculine and feminine energy in them. Like, some men are extremely masculine with no feminine energy, right? Those are the type of men women always say, well, like, he's just so cold and he never opens up, right? Never. And then there's, extremely feminine dudes that are just crying all the time and super emotional 24/7. Then there's more balanced dudes. Same thing with girls, right? And so the polarity thing is I think what we need to notice more. When we talk about the conjunction, it could mean male, female energy. It could mean the physical act of male and female energy, right? Obviously, Aleister Crowley dug deep into that, and so did other people. But if you read the Gospel of Thomas, he talks about making the two become one. And a lot of people say, well, that's the heart and the mind. When we get our emotions involved with our mind and they kind of come together, we can manifest happiness. But I think what you're getting at here is like understanding the alchemical principle. You can look at it in any of these kind of two become one things and realize the power in it, right? And just realize what it really means.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's always about, letting go of, like you have these two opposite forces. It could be male or female. It could be, in alchemy, it's mercury and sulfur. There's all these opposing forces, but the real work is trying to unify them into one and within yourself and the world around you.
Republican Democrats. Now listen.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy to say, right? But when we started, you know how all of the politicians, they're like, well, all the people that talk politics anyways, they're just fighting. But it's a blue versus red fight nonstop, But when we started this country, the first presidents were called what? Democratic Republicans. So the most beautiful part of the Americas when we were the freest, there was no polar separation. That slowly started to happen. And I wonder if there's a backwards process to this alchemy too, as an idea gets realized, it tends to separate and come back together in certain ways. Like right now, I think we're in a stage of separation and dissolution, right? And then maybe we'll come back together and maybe we won't. But it's kind of like looking at the divine process of alchemy. If we follow the steps correctly, then everything should be okay. If we do that. Yeah. I think that's so true. I think I think it's like a good wake-up call of sometimes we seek polarity out, sometimes we like to pit ourselves against that political party versus our own. Mm-hmm. But the alchemist would say, like, you're putting yourself back a step, you're going the wrong way on the ladder. You're not walking up. That it's always about trying to meet people where they're at and see them and, see yourself in them and therefore becoming one with them. Yeah, isn't it funny that most occultists or hermeticists can see, especially like really the deep thinker ones, which I love, by the way. They can see, no matter the situation, they can see the other side always. Even if they're super pissed or angry or something, if they always take a second to see the other side because they've learned the law of polarity, which is one of the Hermetic principles. It's just, this is what I love about this work so much, because once you start learning about the occult, you can see it in everything, like you're talking about. You can see it in cooking. You can see it in biology. You can see it in cosmology. You can see it in behavior. You can see it in everything. For sure. And I'm rambling. You're the guest. I shouldn't be rambling so much. What the hell am I doing? All right.
It's a discussion. It's all good.
Yeah, well, we're at the top of the hour, too. So I'm going to open the phones up. If you want to talk about alchemy or tell me what your ideas about alchemy are you going through one of these 7 stages? We'll finish the 7 stages here, and that's just a small part of the book that Sarah's wrote. And we'll be right back. 1-800-588-0335. That's the call-in number.
Belgium, and you're listening
Stay
to
with
Lying Void with Joe Roop.
Have you ever wanted to dream about being a character in your favorite video game or movie? Would you like to dream your fantasy with all 5 senses in detail and remember everything? It's time to bring the dreaming mind back online. Introducing Dreaming for Gamers from Ian Wilson.
Dreaming for Gamers will teach you how to program your dreams to dream what you want from any video game, movie, or source material that you choose. The courses help rehabilitate the dreaming mind out of atrophy so you can remember your dreams, taste, touch, smell, see, and hear, as well as be self-aware and take complete control over the dream state like Neo in The Matrix. You can't catch COVID in a dream, but you can wake up with a happy ending.
Type in thefringe.fm/dreamplay and sign up today to get dreaming now. That's thefringe.fm/dreamplay, or click the banner at thefringe.fm today and take the 7-day dream challenge for free while it lasts.
Paranormal News, I'm Brad Bernards. Space.com reports NASA's boldest ever Mars rover is on its way to the Red Planet.
5, 4, engine ignition, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff. As the countdown to Mars continues, the perseverance of humanity launching the next generation of robotic explorers to the Red Planet.
The car-sized Perseverance rover launched atop a United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket from Florida's Cape Canaveral Air Force Station July 30th, kicking off a nearly 7-month cruise to the Red Planet. NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine is excited about the launch.
It was an amazing launch, very successful. It went right on time. And of course, it is on a trajectory that has been done now with pinpoint accuracy. The spacecraft rotates, so it's stable, and it is in fact on its way to Mars.
Chris Rutkowski, a researcher who studies unidentified flying objects, said that UFO sightings across Canada have increased over 50% during the country's coronavirus lockdown, according to Newsweek. Rutkowski tracks reports of UFOs cited by UFO organizations, Canadian government sources, and social media networks.
We've noticed there's a huge increase overall in the number of UFO reports filed since people got into lockdown. Overall, throughout all of Canada, they're coming from literally everywhere, from coast to coast, and very significantly increased about 50% from 2019.
That's courtesy CHED 630 Radio. Read about the news at parabnormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Parabnormal News.
Ready to open your mind? It's Lighting the Void with your host, Joe Roop.
This is the Rogie Report news on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie. SpaceX's Crew Dragon returned safely to Earth over the weekend. Just over 62 days ago, NASA astronauts Robert Behnken and Douglas Hurley left Earth for the International Space Station. SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft touched down with the astronauts off the coast of Florida on August 2nd. NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine explains what this mission means for NASA.
This was a great day for NASA and a great day for the United States of America. I want to thank our SpaceX partners and, of course, the Commercial Crew Program here at NASA. What an amazing day. Today, we really made history. We are entering a new era of human spaceflight where NASA is no longer the purchaser, owner, and operator of all the hardware. We are going to be a customer, one customer of many customers in a very robust commercial marketplace for human spaceflight to low Earth orbit. But we also want to have numerous providers that are competing against each other on cost and innovation and safety, driving down costs and increasing access to space in a way that's never been seen before. So this is really an amazing day. But we also need to remember that this is just the beginning. Now is the time to capitalize on all of the great programs that have recently been established, to include going sustainably to the moon under a program we call Artemis. When we think about the Artemis program, we're going to the moon sustainably. We're going to go with commercial partners and international partners. We're going to use the resources of the moon to learn how to live and work on another world for long periods of time. We're going to take all of that knowledge and we're going to go to Mars. This is an amazing moment. And the Commercial Crew Program has really just proven the business model for how we go forward, and we do more than we've ever been able to do before.
I said it before, and I'll say it again. There is a lot of money to be made in space. Prepping for a Zoom call can be scary. In the time of COVID, Zoom calls have become a common way to keep connected. British film director Rob Savage came up with the idea for a film while sheltering in place. The movie takes place entirely on Zoom and during the pandemic. How proper. Savage said in order to capture the realism, he actually used Zoom to film. The movie follows 6 friends whose weekly Zoom call goes dark when they decide to conduct a seance. Host is now available on Shudder. This is the Rogie Report news on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Houston. 20 seconds to LOS speed rescue.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. We're at the top of the second hour with our guest, Sarah Durn. And we're talking about her new book that's out right now. You can go grab the book on Amazon or Kindle, The Beginner's Guide to Alchemy. So this is a really good book if you want to know what alchemy is, the basics of it, get a little history, some really cool information. I've already learned some pretty cool stuff tonight about it. And we're going through something that we've never done on the show. We're doing this with Sarah because she put this in her book, the 7 stages of alchemy. And we've already went through the first, I believe we went through the first 4. Yeah. So we went through calcination, dissolution, separation, and conjunction. Conjunction was the last one before we took a break, talking about the sacred marriage. That's consummated. You can call in at 1-800-588-0335 if you have any examples of alchemy in your life where we normally wouldn't look. I want you guys to think about these 7 stages, not just as a major like magical or occult principle, but really think about how these things work in all types of aspects of your life. And this is why it's so powerful. And thanks again for coming on the show, Sarah. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So number 5, we're at fermentation, which is the fermentation stage of rubedo. Tell us about this. I mean, is this like wine? Is that same way they make wine? When I think fermentation, I think wine or moonshine.
Well, it's interesting. I actually, for the book, was looking into, you know how you call, hard liquor spirits?
Uh-huh.
That has to do with alchemy because many spirits hard liquors were developed in the Middle Ages and even prior to that. I mean, many of them are really old. But alchemy was part of their creation, and they were called spirits because they were seen as the essence of whatever, crop they came from. So I thought that was really cool, but has to do with kind of the fermentation stage of alchemy as well. So this is the red phase. So this is the last 3 stages. So fermentation, distillation, and coagulation all are part of the red phase. And so in conjunction, we kind of talked about how in the sacred marriage, so you have these opposing forces coming together. Symbolically, they're the red king and white queen, also called Mercury and sulfur. Alchemists call them all sorts of different things. And when those 2 forces come together, they create a fetus of something new. But in order for that fetus to grow, you have to introduce something else to the mixture, something alive, something to kind of give it a spark. And so they would introduce fermenting bacteria, oftentimes alchemists would, to the concoction they've created thus far. And so what that looks like in, personal transformation in the spiritual and mental side of things, it's a moment where some new spark enters. So, you've gone through this dark night of the soul in calcination. You've sort of bathed in the waters of dissolution. You separated out and left behind what isn't useful in separation. And then those opposing forces have come together in conjunction. So you've gone through a lot of phases that are pretty insular. So it's all like sort of self-work. So fermentation is a moment where you bring in something new to kind of spark new inspiration. It could be a new religious text you start to study. It could be yoga. It could be a new practice like meditation. It could be, starting a journal practice. It's usually like rests on like the ideas of others. So like a religious text is a really good example of something new to kind of inspire you or make you think about things differently, or, even like a scientific text. So yeah, that's kind of what the fermentation is all about. It's this moment where something external is coming into your life and sort of inspiring you in some way.
And you say here it's best, and then this is where you and I might tangle up a little bit, but you say it's best if this isn't reliant on another person and is more self-contained. It's more reliable to fall in love with yourself, after all, than with a new lover or friend. Now, let me ask you this question, though. There are people that I believe that do alchemize through relationships, right? If a person helps you fall in love with yourself or helps you see that part of yourself, it could just be a friend, it could be a family member, or an inspiring teacher of some kind helps you fall in love with yourself. Don't you tend to see, and I do this too, like I've seen it a lot, don't you tend to see this happen at this stage? Like when you're going through fermentation,
definitely.
You'll get new friends, you may move, you may travel, some kind of big change that's coming through inspiration of the unknown, but you're just feeling inspired. Sometimes it's people. But I think if whatever you're doing is not helping you to learn about your own happiness, then you should probably check that for sure. That part I do agree.
Right. Yeah. I think you can find it in another person. I think you have to be careful about that. I know with me, and I know with, sometimes you can get so wrapped, especially in a romantic connection, you can get so wrapped up in the other person that you forget about the spiritual work or the personal work you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So then it ceases to be useful, then it becomes, you become almost more invested in their spiritual growth than you do your own, which, is only going to backfire on you because you can only really deal with yourself.
I honestly don't think that's real love, to be honest with you. I think that's like infatuation.
Yeah.
I think real love is whether it's through friendship, romance, or whatever, is when two people, not only are they on the same like frequency, but they grow each other in that way. They don't enable each other. You see what I mean? And like your family, like if your family loves you that way, your best friends should love you that way. And I think as we get older, we start realizing like attachments and certain types of negative things that we get attached to, and we don't want to go the hard route about anything, but we get attached to negative situations. I think this is where you find a lot of people, especially in relationships where it's like they're chasing the inevitable, or they keep trying to change a person or hope for the best, and it just never happens. But there's stuff coming in, and this happens to me too. Like every time I go through this, there's stuff coming in their life that's trying to get them to change too. So I think it's all about kind of meeting that frequency,
Yeah. And I think it's also about, even in healthy relationships, where it's not an infatuation, another person can just be a distraction in some ways. And, you have to worry about their work schedule and trying to get dinner tonight and, trying to coordinate schedules and when you're going to go on that vacation. And that's all well and good, but there's something also to be said, like, yes, have that relationship in your life, have the healthy connections in your life, but there's something really nice about bringing in, like different alchemists would start at this stage of personal transformation and fermentation would read the Bible more closely than they ever had before and like talk about new ways of seeing things. It's like sort of like learning a new thing you've always wanted to learn. Like that's a good way of looking at it. Like I think you can find such inspiration and such fulfillment through just learning.
You want to know that helps? I'll give you guys a hint, at least something in my. I'm almost 40 and I have learned this one thing about relationships, right? So if you are changing or you're interested in something or you have an idea or you just have an inspiration to do, you're going down your path, right? A person that I believe that should be in your life is going to support that, right? Even if it doesn't have anything to do with you. Say they're interested in painting and you're interested in chopping wood. Well, they say, well, I want to do this painting. And you're like, well, I want you to chop wood with me. That's a little bad analogy, but this is what happens, right? Instead of those two people supporting each other, whether it's friendships or whatever, they get all upset because they're looking at things differently and they got different ideas. They're not supporting each other's path. That is a clear sign. You know how people talk about like red flags? I hate that, by the way, because everybody's got red flags. But that to me is one of them.
Yeah.
When your path is not being respected, you know.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking, you know, these 7 stages of transformation in alchemy can be transformation, yes, on a personal level, but also I think like two people in a partnership, be that romantic or platonic, can go through these 7 stages too. Just like
you mean like together?
You know, our nation can. Yeah, like I think a partner could go through, you know, you like with partnerships, you go through dark nights of the soul, you go through calcination, and then you have to kind of go to dissolution and like calm and soothe, and then you separate, and maybe that's like actual separation from the person. I don't know. But I think you can apply, there's creative ways of thinking about these stages that apply even to like more than just two people, like a family group or
the void walkers. Yeah.
The void walkers. Yeah. I was just thinking about that. That's the first time I've thought about that. But yeah, I think that's true. Because it's the art of transformation is what alchemy is ultimately. And I think all things transform. Our relationships, ourselves, as individuals. So I think it all connects.
Don't you ever wonder how, like, when people ask about that, they're like, well, why is the divorce rate so high? And how come relationships last about 10 years and then people get tired of each other and da-da-da-da, right? But it's not that way. There are plenty of couples out there that last lifetimes and all this stuff. What you need to pay attention to is what are they doing with it? Like my neighbor, Roy, Miss Graves and Roy, of course, they would go at it every now and then, but they adored each other and they grew each other. Because I can remember as a kid, he would talk to me about the stuff that she taught him, or vice versa, right? Like they were learning and growing from each other, not what are you going to give me and you're not giving me this anymore, right? And but that's important, right? If you say that and another person doesn't do that, it's important. But it's that way in everything in your life. Like, are you happy with your job? Are you happy with how you're expressing yourself? Are you happy with your abundance and your health? And all of this stuff, I think we go through alchemy. We're constantly going through these alchemical stages. And you say, you know, that number 7 is so freaking divine. Like, they say your cells are not the same. Every 7 years, you're a different person. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I'm kind of just shocked at how big this is, actually. Let's go to the next stage here. Number 6 is the distillation stage of rubedo. What's this about, Sarah?
So distillation, I talked about a little bit ago how you see these transitions from some sort of fire to something with water, something calming. So you see that with this, because fermentation, oftentimes a controlled low heat is applied to the substance because that makes the bacteria grow. And so distillation is another moment where you purify. So you purify this substance in physical alchemy. So physical alchemy or exoteric alchemy is when you're doing the physical experiment So you purify the substance, oftentimes through evaporation or I don't know how to say this word, cohabation. Basically, that's when you purify a substance in a liquid repeatedly. So that's kind of the physical side of it, but in the spiritual, mental side of it, and you kind of see this reflection to the first two stages of calcination and disillusion again. But again, this is a moment in your personal transformation where you kind of open up space to have new insights, and you work to purify yourself based upon those insights. So in fermentation, you're sort of opening yourself up to new ideas, right? If you're reading, let's say, the Bible for the first time, and you're sort of reading the New Testament, you're getting inspired by it. And then distillation is where you take what's useful for you and sort of can leave the rest behind. So it's very similar to dissolution in some ways, which is very fitting because it sort of mirrors the beginning and the end. The beginning mirrors the end, and the end mirrors the beginning. So you see this loop. So it's not like it's a end process oftentimes. Like I was explaining earlier, that just by doing the work, you're doing, that's the whole thing. That's enlightenment, is just by doing the work. But yeah, that's kind of what distillation is about.
Cool. All right. So then we go to the next step there. Like I don't really want to brush over distillation, but I guess it's like when you've made that change, you've transformed to kind of simplify it. But after you've transformed, it's not like the problems go away, but they're not so great. They're just there, and you're having to deal with them on a smaller level as you make one transformation after the other, right? Because now you've purified yourself to deal with them.
Yeah.
It's not a massive like shock to you. It's a lesser thing that you understand now, you know?
Yeah. It's like I was saying, you're continuing to refining yourself and purifying yourself through these 7 stages. So, like,
so what the Cajuns call put it on low heat and let it simmer for a while, right? That's what's happening.
Right, exactly. That's fermentation, Cajun style.
All right. And then in your book, you talk about, so therapy is a great example of distillation. Therapists help their clients make breakthroughs and then reintegrate those breakthroughs into their minds and spiritual selves. I think depending on who we are, the amount of distillation that we go through could be light. It could be a lot. Like if you got a lot of Scorpio in your chart, you're just going to be stilling in heavy levels all the time. You're going to be alchemizing constantly. I hate to tell you,
sure, yeah,
but you will be.
But that's also like a gift in a way.
Yeah,
you're going to get so close to enlightenment. Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Yeah, like a Scorpio, if they really focused, like if somebody had a lot of Scorpio, I'm not just saying like one sign in Scorpio, but if you had a lot of Scorpio in your chart and you really focused on self-improvement, I think people would be shocked at how fast you did it or how fast, you know, like if you really actually did focus on it. But then there's that other Scorpio side that's like, you know, I don't want to do a damn thing but for myself. So it's kind of a challenge. Every sign has that challenge though. Like Aries, if you got a lot of Aries in your chart, well, you don't mind the fire, you don't mind the change, but you don't stick around to let it ferment or distill very long. So it never coagulates. Then you start all over, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like Joseph Campbell stuff we're talking about. So the last stage is the stage 7, right? And if you've guys ever studied alchemy, you hear this term solvent coagula, which is this whole process, right? To transform. In physical alchemy, coagulation is the final stage of alchemical transformation. So what happens here, Sarah?
So coagulation is sort of that you've done it. You've reached enlightenment. You've hit nirvana. In physical alchemy, you've created a new physical substance that, you know, you've created gold, or you've created the philosopher's stone, which is this alchemical concept of, it's defined in different ways in different texts, but oftentimes is thought of as, something that would heal all impurities in the body, therefore making you live forever. Also seen as the universal solvent, which is a very important thing in alchemy because it could turn anything into a liquid. And it's the moment when, it gets sort of heady, like coagulation. So it's the physical becomes metaphysical and the metaphysical becomes physical. Oftentimes, alchemists would depict coagulation as an individual with a halo, and the halo would kind of be this physical manifestation of the divine that would occur. It would be this, it's kind of where, so like there's these kind of two tracks of alchemy, right? It's like there's the physical side of alchemy, which is the experiments, the exoteric alchemy, the stuff that happens in the laboratory. And then there's this, and both are equally important, I should say. You can't do one without the other, according to alchemists. And then there's like the personal transformation, the esoteric, the inner alchemy. And it's in coagulation where those two different sides of alchemy merge. So, like I said, in physical alchemy, gold, you've made gold from lead. You've created the Philosopher's Stone. In spiritual and mental alchemy, you have, your aura is cleansed. Maybe it's even like people can see it if they're tuned in enough to kind of be aware of it. You might manifest a halo. It's kind of like there's all these different ideas of it. And it's sort of, you've hit perfection. You've done it. You've completed the journey. Which I think when I was reading about it, it was sort of like, oh, like I'm never going to have a halo. But I think, it's like the reason why we have conceptions of the divine, whatever that means to you, some higher power. This is where you merge with the higher power, which, is really what a lot of mysticism is about. It's about seeing yourself as divine, as part of the greater whole, part of the universe, whatever you want to call that, divine, God, Allah. Yeah, so it's sort of like a stage that defies explanation. So it's a hard one to put into words, both for me and for the alchemist I was reading when writing the book, but that's my best attempt.
Well, this whole thing, if there's a really brilliant process that happens here that is hidden in all of occultism that I think occultists will start to pick up on the pattern and understand this, because you're going to see these numbers a lot. You're going to see 3, 7, 10, and 22, right? So 3, so you got 3 is like, you can correspond that with the 3 mother letters, or the 3 major letters, like in Hebrew, which is, I think it's like Mem, Shem. It's like Mem, the holy letter Shin, which is fire, and I forget the other one. I think it's Tav or something like that, right? Which represents salt, sulfur, and mercury. And then you have 7, which is like the 7 mother letters, which is the process of, which represents this process as well. And you look in Hebrew, and they have all these different correspondences for these letters, right? Then you have the 22 letters, which are the final 10 or whatever that make up, or the final 12 or whatever that make up the rest, not 10. And so it's like 3, 7, and 12. You see that a lot. But then if you read, like, one of the first occultist books that I ever read was Agrippa's book about occult philosophy, and he's really talking about alchemy, but he's not saying it when he's talking about the 4 elements, which you get into the 4 elements in your book as well. And he talks about how each element represents either heat, moisture, or dryness, and the combinations of those, right?
Yeah.
There's a riddle to that. There's a key to all of that. I totally believe, and I'm starting to see it, with the Hebrew letters, the tarot, the arcana, alchemy, the whole process of transformation, it gets broken down into its smallest parts. You can break it down and look at it like you were talking about, a major 3 parts. You can break it down into 7, 12 parts with the archetypes and everything, or the stories. You can break it down even further in the Kabbalah when you put it all together and realize that the paths and the Sephirah are 32 paths, right? And then if you look in the East, well, they have 32 parts of energy, and our guest last night has a book about that. And so all of Western occultism and all the Western mystery schools are showing you this process of transformation on some level. Like even in Freemasonry, when they go through the first rite, they have 3 stages. Entered apprentice. I forget the next one because it's leaving me right now. Entered apprentice, the next one, and then the master mason, fellow craft, and master mason. It's the same thing. It's the same process that you're going through.
Yeah.
And then you get into the Scottish Rite, and you got what, 32 degrees? Or you go into the York Rite, and you got what, 10 degrees? You see what I'm saying? It's all in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty fascinating.
And even beyond just the numbers, which is, this really specific way of connecting all of them. But I feel like the basic tenet of all of it is just like, we are God and God is us, and like it's all interconnected. And that's kind of, that's like a lot of the mystics out there basically comes down to that conclusion.
Yeah, because I think in the mystery schools, I just blew through the last break, so I guess we don't have to take it because I'm already 5 minutes past it, so oh well. But in mystery schools, that's what they want you to do, is they want you to keep diving until you see the entire process of transformation, and then break it back down into its smallest form, and then see it in everything in nature. And then you can go back out into nature and realize that there is a thing called natural law, that everything is working in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to like talk about this. I feel like I'm talking over you here, but if you guys like read the book, I don't want to give away your book, but I'm getting a lot of this from your book, just so people know, because it's in front of me. Now, you wrote a chapter on women in alchemy. That's interesting. And what did you find out about that?
Well, it's a little, I don't know what you call it. It's a couple pages dedicated to the women of alchemy. But there's so many women in alchemy that it's kind of amazing. Like, you have Hypatia.
I love that movie. Have you seen it?
Ancient
Agora?
Alexandria. I haven't. We talked about it when I was on Cosmic Keys, and I still haven't seen it, but it's on the list. I know how it ends because I know her life story, so I know it doesn't end so well. So I have to like work up to watch it, kind of.
I think you'd
Whenever
really
I know
like
something ends poorly. Yeah, I know I will. I also love, I think it's Rachel Weisz is in it.
Mm-hmm.
She's so good. But yeah, so she's kind of one of the earliest alchemists we know of, but especially in Alexandria. So in alchemy started, we have some of the kind of the earliest conception of alchemy around 300 CE or BCE. 300 CE. In Alexandria in Egypt. And Alexandria was this epic place to be in the year 300. It was like, imagine, it was a university. It was where all the scholars came. It was like Cambridge and Oxford on crack. It was, like super, it was just where all the learned people would end up. So it was, imagine, the society of philosophers, essentially. And alchemy was one of the preeminent subjects of that period. So you have a lot of female alchemists there. You have Cleopatra, not Cleopatra that you're probably thinking of, a different Cleopatra, who was solely an alchemist, never queen of Egypt. No love affairs with Mark Antony or anything like that. But she developed very important alchemical tools. I believe she developed the alembic. And then you have another female alchemist of Alexandria. Her name's escaping me right now. But it was really, like, women were really active in Alexandria during that time. With kind of the my favorite being Hypatia of that time, because Hypatia was amazing.
Yeah, she had a lot of students, and they had slaves and students, but Hypatia taught her slaves as students too. Like, she didn't look at them. I don't know. She was ahead of her time. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she was. So she, I think, was the daughter of a mathematician, if I'm not mistaken. And she traveled extensively throughout the ancient world. We know she traveled, and then she returned to Alexandria and became a professor and was very revered. And so this is a time also where you weren't just a professor oftentimes of one subject like you would be today. You were just sort of a philosopher and a learned person on many subjects. So she would know alchemy and philosophy and natural sciences and all the subjects of the era. But alchemy was one of her favorites. And, the government officials of the time would go and ask her opinions to dispute matters. And she was so respected that, when there were two government officials that were arguing about something, she could go and help them come to a conclusion and come to a middle ground. And she was an alchemist. And she met a very grisly end. Unfortunately, she was a pagan at a time when, the world was starting to Christianize, and she had gotten word that it was no longer safe for her to be in Alexandria. And she got in her carriage and tried to get out of town, and these monks, you kind of think of monks as like,
yeah, they're not usually
men of God or whatever.
Type. Yeah.
No, right? One would hope.
I have
I'm
a
sure
monastery
they've done more.
up the road from my house that's very peaceful. Like, I've only talked to the monks that live up there just a few times in my life, and they're very peaceful people. But look, if you want to know like what Sarah's talking about this time that happened, like, everybody always asks, like, why is religion doing that? Why is it so bad in the world? And why are we in this state and the patriarchy and all this? Just watch Agora. It shows that whole transition was happening during that time period when all of the, when all of the religions were going at each other's throat and were killing each other. And so these leaders like Constantine and Roman leaders and stuff, they had to come up with ways to calm this stuff down. And if that meant sacrificing somebody like Hypatia, which they didn't really want to do, then it's one of those things. I wonder how they make those decisions sometimes,
Yeah. I think it's the Christianization of Europe and is I find it very interesting. And I think there's, in some places that happened relatively quickly, like in Ireland, because there wasn't a conception of the differences between one religion and another. The Celtic people, and to some degree to the Vikings or Norsemen, they just saw Christianity as like another god to add to the pantheon, like Jesus and God, which is sort of crazy to think about. But then obviously there's a lot of turmoil there too. It wasn't always an easy transition. But yeah, Hypatia was pulled out of her carriage and brutally murdered by these monks. Again, like the stories it's always tricky because the texts we have are often, especially in alchemy, a lot of them are rooted in ancient Egyptian religion and science and mathematics. And then you kind of see alchemy become, coagulate, as you would say, in 300 in Alexandria. And then a lot of the texts, we don't have a lot of the original Greek text. So like our stories of Hypatia get translated to us oftentimes through Arabic texts that were then reintroduced to the European world in the Middle Ages through Spain and different areas where Islamic culture was, interacting with Christian culture or different European cultures.
Yeah, it is really interesting. But when you watch the movie too, I've asked everybody on this show. I bet you Dan probably from Cosmic Keys heard about Agora through me. If you're listening, Dan, I'm gonna take credit for that. But I recommend everybody watch that, especially if you're a woman or a feminist and you really want to validate some of the stuff that you're realizing about what happened, the transition of things that happened. There was no before and I wouldn't just say it wasn't just the Christians, it was the Jews too. It was the Roman Catholic side of Christianity, the Jews, and all of it when they came against the pagans, when they burned down the Library of Alexandria. It shows pretty much everything in there. It shows the whole process. Now, of course, it's acted out, and it's, we don't know how it went down, but the records show that that's how it went down. They pretty much stuck to the story.
Yeah.
And Hypatia inspired so many people, through astrology and alchemy and philosophy.
Yeah.
And would speak
a
out.
lot of people, historians really note her death specifically as the end of the sort of golden period of alchemy that happened in Alexandria.
Yeah, she would speak out in Senate halls and stuff. If she believed in something, she would speak out to a crowd of men, and that's what pissed them off, because they read in their text, that a woman was supposed to be subject to a man, which is old Judaism stuff that got passed on to Christianity. I can't. Everything that I've ever studied about Jesus or Yeshua, the man that became, God in the flesh or whatever, everything I've studied about this guy, I don't think he was a Christian at all. I think they just idolized him. And then what we do as humans, we do that all the time. Somebody comes along and they're different, and they're going through a transformation, and they've turned into gold, and then we tell them you're not this or that, and we try to get them to be afraid, and when they're not afraid, and then we realize that when we as humans realize that death doesn't even scare these people, then we kill them, right? And then we make gods out of them because they weren't afraid to die for what they believed in. And then we kill each other over those gods. Pretty stupid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Christianity didn't exist when Jesus was around, certainly, because it's named after him, There's so much. I think he was just a very mystical, enlightened person that people got to interact with. And then, that's just my personal belief, which,
Well, there's a guy that I don't know if you know who he is, but Daskalos or Dr. Stylianos Ateshlis, who apparently has lineage to whatever I believe he does, has lineage to whatever he calls Yahshua was his name. That was the person that they made the stories about. But he was also one of the masters for the Theosophical Society, that the Theosophical Society would always talk about hidden masters that they would never reveal. Well, he was one of those guys that taught them, because he could heal people with his hands and did all kinds of stuff. And he thinks the same thing, that every religion had a secret mystery school, a sacred truth to it that was all part of one he called it like one jewel or one necklace with all the jewels of truth on it. You know, there was no, there's a word for that. I don't know what the word for it is, but.
Yeah, I've heard it. I know the word too, but I don't know it.
I don't know, but the word we accept all religions, there's a word for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is.
But I think this book that you wrote is fantastic because we get so involved intellectually and stuff, Sarah, that I think we forget about the basics. We forget about the Hermetic principles, just the basic laws of nature and truth. And this is a really good book on the basics of alchemy and the history and understanding it, the mental, the spiritual, the physical. Yeah, I think you did really well with it.
Oh, thank you. It was a labor of love.
Are you going to write another book about occult subjects, do you think?
I am working on a new book. It's not so much about occult subjects per se, but you know, I think it all connects if you look for it. I'm researching a new book on female travelers throughout history that will start with, we know academics have found evidence that we know that there were female merchants that sailed the seven seas in the ancient world in ancient Greece. So they're going to be one topic I look into. There's this Viking woman named Gudrid that sailed to North America in the year 1000, the first documented European woman to step foot in North America in Newfoundland. And so it's going to highlight all these different women, probably around 6 to 9 different subjects. I'm still kind of researching who I want to highlight. Yeah, but I'm really excited about it. It's been really fun researching it for the last couple months. Tentatively titled The Forgotten Adventuresses, an Abridged History to Female Travel.
Yeah. You know what I like about your book too is that you got like infographics in here too. My brain works really well with this. So if I read something and then you have a graph that shows the 7 planets, how they correspond to the 7 traditional planets, the 7 stages, the alchemical concepts, the metal that they correspond to, and the zodiac signs that they correspond to. And if you guys get this book, when you look at this graph, and you know what all these signs and symbols mean, you're gonna see this in your life. You're gonna see this, that you've went through this in your life. Whether it be health, wealth, relationships, doesn't matter. You've went through these stages either knowingly, and this is the cool part about it, right? Like, you know about it, so you're aware of what's going on, and it's more powerful to be aware, I think.
Oh, definitely.
What do you think your favorite thing about alchemy is, though? Because we're running out of time, and I meant to ask you that in the beginning. Like, is it the mental side, the spiritual side, or the physical side? If you had to choose one that you like to study the most or work with the most, which one would it be?
It's definitely the spiritual side of it. I think that there's a lot to be said. I mean, I find personally a lot of meaning in looking to nature and looking at the world around me and looking at the moon and looking at the seasons changing. And I find a lot of meaning in that. And that to me is sort of the physical alchemy side of things. It's, you know, understanding how the world transforms around me. And then the spiritual side of it is looking at how I transform within that context. But I think what I like about alchemy and why I think it appeals to me so much is that alchemists always saw, you know, they didn't see the physical and the spiritual as disconnected. I think sometimes when you talk about religion or you talk about spirituality, you sort of divorce it from your body, from the world. Alchemists never did that. It was always about the world. It was always about embodying the transformation. You know, kind of similar to yoga. It's like about the transformation happens as you're doing the movements, as you're doing the experiments, as the moon is changing its phase, you know? And that's what I think is so cool because, yeah, I guess that's my favorite part. It's just kind of looking around me and seeing all these transformations happening, you know, like the flowers in the vase by my bedside slowly decaying, and like that's its own transformation and its own little alchemical experiment.
Yeah, so everything's got a natural process to it. I promise you, like, this is the beautiful part about the esoteric and the occult, is when you start seeing everything come together. And I said this to Phoenix Aurelius, and I think you're kind of proving this too with your book. You know, in a lot of mystery schools, they start you out learning like the basics, you know, learn the planets, learn the elements, learn this, learn that. But I think that we're evolved enough now that if we just picked up a book on alchemy like this one and worked backwards, I think it would work better, honestly. I really do.
I think there's a lot to be said for just following where you're curious. You know, I don't think you have to, you know, if you're starting to get into the esoteric or the occult, just like go to what you feel drawn to. And I think that will
what you're most interested
be
in,
the best way to find meaning. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of obvious, isn't it? But I think sometimes we get caught up in but if I don't know, like, the zodiac signs and what the associations and the attributes of each zodiac sign are, I can't possibly do alchemy. Like, I don't know. I don't buy that.
I think you will. That's the thing about it, is like eventually you will, because you're just going to study it enough. You're going to learn about it all. You just got to give yourself time, and you will.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I got to ask for Night Stalker, what's the deal with God? Where's the alchemy in Godzilla? What's up with that? Like, why is that in your bio? He's really interested in the Godzilla thing.
That's exciting. Well, Godzilla, I wrote this piece for Gizmodo, same place I wrote a piece on alchemy, on the new Godzilla movie that came out last summer. And I looked at all the medieval and historical creatures that the Godzilla movies, and that movie specifically, there were, oh gosh, I don't remember all the specific creatures, but there's like the giant moth, and there's this dinosaur with multiple heads, and looked at the ancient Japanese myths and folklore that those creatures are based on. And then it wasn't directly tied to alchemy, that article, but, you know, you can find alchemy in anything. So, especially with Godzilla and the creation of Godzilla, Godzilla was created by this Japanese movie studio right after the bombings at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And Godzilla emerges from the radioactive material. And so, I mean, if you want to think about a moment of calcination, of like the dark night of the soul, certainly having your country bombed by a nuclear bomb is one.
Yeah, for sure. That's calcination, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
That's definitely a bad, horrible thing to have happen. And so the movie studio created Godzilla. So it's kind of like this alchemy of, you know, it's sort of like a dark side of alchemy, perhaps, of like if the bad things are left alone to fester, it coagulates into something you don't want manifested. Like, you know, a big T-Rex that emerges from, what is Godzilla? It's like is he a Komodo dragon? I don't know. Whatever like Godzilla is. He looks kind of T-Rexy.
It's a hybrid for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
You got it down.
The giant lizard, you know, not a good thing to become if you don't deal with your dark side.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, listen, we got to roll out of here. I really appreciate the conversation and writing a book on basic. I think this book is great. Really, it's not just a quick read that you threw together. Like, you put a lot of thought into this, a lot of infographics. If anybody wants to learn about alchemy and understand the basics, this really is a good book, and I highly recommend it. I'll be putting the links in the archive. Can you tell everybody how to follow your work? How do they keep up with you? Since you spent all this time with us, tell everybody how they can follow you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. If you have any specific questions, you can always feel free to email me. My email is Sarah with an H, so Sarah. And then my last name is Durn, Durn, and then the number 3 at Gmail. On Instagram, I'm Sarah Durn 3. And yeah, you already mentioned my website, but it's sarahdurn.com. So yeah,
we got to roll out of here.
Love to hear from you guys.
I want to thank you guys for listening. Pacho, the chat room, the patrons. Don't copy the show. The music was by Chronox and Steezy Stevie. We'll be back tomorrow night. Stay tuned for the Secret Teachings. Good night. Well, we barely made it.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.